Our opening thought comes from Bill Nye, the science guy, and his writing Undeniable Evolution and the Science of Creation. Nye writes, biodiversity is a result of the process of evolution, and it is also a safety net that helps keep that process going. In order to pass our own genes into the future and enable our offspring to live long and prosper, we must reverse the current trend and preserve as much biodiversity as possible. If we don't, we will sooner or later join the fossil record of extinction. Our next reading comes from Elizabeth Colbert and her book titled The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History. Colbert writes, obviously, the fate of our own species concerns us disproportionately. But at the risk of sounding anti-human, some of my best friends are humans, I will say that it is not, in the end, what's most worth attending to. Right now, in the amazing moment that to us counts as the present, we are deciding, without quite meaning to, which evolutionary pathways will remain open and which will forever be closed. No other creature has ever managed this, and it will, unfortunately, be our most enduring legacy. The sixth extinction will continue to determine the course of life long after everything people have written and painted and built has been ground into the dust, and giant rats have or have not inherited the earth. Our next reading is from Catherine Hayhoe, who's a climate scientist who lives not too far away from here now in Plano, Texas. And she wrote an essay on Global Biodiversity Day, which is in May, titled One Planet, Two Crises, Tackling Climate Change and Biodiversity in the Fight for Our Future. Hayhoe writes, the biodiversity crisis isn't new. Over the last 4 centuries, humans have driven at least 680 mammal, bird, reptile, amphibian, and fish species into extinction. But as with climate change, the rate of impact has escalated. Since 1970, the World Wildlife Federation has documented a nearly 70% decline in populations of existing wildlife species. And across the more than 8 million animal and plant species on Earth, the human-induced extinction rate is estimated at hundreds of times greater than natural rates. With so many species still undiscovered, these numbers vary widely. Enough is known about the impacts of human activities on biodiversity, though, for ecologists to label the era we're currently in as the sixth extinction. You may have guessed by now from the readings that there have been 5 major extinction events during Earth's existence, in which a large percentage of the species that were living at the time went extinct. The first great extinction event was the end Ordovician extinction, which happened 443.8 million years ago. And that's before life had really evolved on land. So this was a marine life extinction event. And global cooling was the main cause of the end Ordovician extinction event. And during that extinction, 25% of marine families and 85% of marine species probably more familiar with species as a category. 85% of marine species were lost during that first major extinction event. Then there was a second great extinction event during the late Devonian period, and the late Devonian extinction happened 407.6 million to 358.9 million years ago, happened over a long period of time. And this event is thought to be caused by changes in sea level and by global cooling and by volcanic activity in the oceans. And like the first extinction event, it primarily affected marine life because there still was not very much in terms of land life at that time. And the losses during the second extinction included 15 to 20% of marine families and 70 to 80% of all animal species that were on Earth at that time. The third great extinction was the end Permian extinction. This was the extinction event of all extinction events. It occurred from 265.1 million years ago to 251.9 million years ago. Global warming, which was caused by massive volcanic activity, is thought to be the main reason for the third extinction event. And given that it was related to global warming, this is an extinction event that we might have a lot to learn from during our current time. Some scientists contend that it was not caused by volcanic activity, but rather was caused by comets or asteroids hitting the Earth. So there's not complete agreement among the scientists on what the cause of the end Permian extinction was. But it was the most dramatic die-off, eliminating about half of all families of life on Earth and 90% of all species, which included some 95% of marine species being wiped out and about 70% of land species being lost during the end Permian extinction event. The fourth major extinction event was the late Triassic extinction that took place 201.3 million years ago. I'd love to learn more about the science of how they can be so exact in terms of when it occurred, but in the fossil record they can see it. This extinction, the late Triassic extinction, was caused by rapid climate change that was the result of either volcanic activity or an asteroid impact. The late Triassic extinction led to 20% of marine families being extinct and some 75% of all extant species on Earth dying out. The fourth major extinction event that I just mentioned actually was great for dinosaurs. It opened up some ecological niches that allowed the dinosaurs to evolve and to flourish. But then the fifth major extinction event comes, and that was the end Cretaceous extinction, which happened 66 million years ago. This extinction event may be the most well-known among the general public, as it is the extinction that took out the dinosaurs and was caused by a large comet or asteroid striking the Earth, maybe more than one. So when we listen to these extinction events, it may be difficult to find a silver lining when it comes to global major extinction events. But had it not been for the late Triassic extinction, the dinosaurs would likely not have flourished as they did for so long. And if it had not been for the end Cretaceous extinction, the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, mammals would likely not have evolved to flourish as they have. and we as humans would likely not be here today. So perhaps we should thank our lucky stars, or in this case, our lucky comet or lucky asteroid, that the impact of a celestial object 66 million years ago made our existence today a reality. The good news, in the midst of the 5 major extinction events, if one can find good news in major extinction events, is that in the existence of the Earth, even in the midst of these 5 major extinction events, life has found a way. Life finds a way. Now, that may be little consolation for the species that are now gone forever, but even after the most extreme extinction events, life has found a way to recover and to flourish again. But it is important to note that it has taken life about 10 million years to recover after each major extinction event. 10 million years may not be that long, geologically speaking, but for you and me, it might as well be an eternity. At this point, you may be asking yourselves why I've just taken us on a ride down extinction memory lane and why any of this matters for us today. Sadly, the answer to this query is that it matters because, as the readings we heard earlier indicate, and because of some evidence that's overwhelming, we are now experiencing the 6th Great Extinction event in Earth's existence. The current extinction rate is likely somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 times greater than the normal background extinction rate. That means species are going extinct 1,000 to 10,000 times faster than they would if there were no human activity on Earth. In the last 50 years, we have seen a massive loss in the numbers of wildlife, with a 69% drop since 1970, according to the World Wildlife Fund Living Planet Report that came out in 2022. Amphibians may be the canary in the coal mine of the 6th Great Extinction, with half of all amphibians in decline and 40% threatened with extinction, according to the Amphibian Survival Alliance. I was so happy that our older daughter, Ray, when she was a teaching assistant for an undergraduate biology class in May, found a horny toad in the Wichita Mountains, and actually got to hold the horny toad. And it was the first time I'd actually seen a horny toad in that area of Oklahoma in a very long time. Unfortunately, I just got to see it by camera, but she was able to see it. And the professor that she was with wanted to make sure that they made a note of it, because you don't see many of those around anymore. And amphibians around the world are under threat. Coral reefs are dying in warming oceans. There's kind of a sweet spot of temperature for coral reefs to be able to survive and flourish in the oceans. And many of the coral reefs are now in waters that are too hot for them to survive. And half of the world's coral reefs are at risk by 2035, according to the World Economic Forum. Fisheries around the world have been decimated by overfishing, and also marine life in general is being threatened by ocean warming and the acidification that is also happening in our oceans. We know how we got here. We know how we got here to the 6th Great Extinction. And we know also what the problem is. It's us. We are the problem. If you're a Swiftie, I think Taylor Swift has a song that's close to that. It's me, I'm the problem. It's us. We are the problem. Our overconsumption and also the unsustainable systems that we have created have caused massive habitat loss. With 97% of Earth's land being altered by human activity. 97%, according to Frontiers in Forests and Global Change in 2021. We have caused global deforestation, cutting down 10 million hectares of forests each year, according to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, with a net loss of 5 million hectares of forests every year. And we know that in the Amazon, this is a really significant problem. And the Amazon has so much biodiversity that when those forests are cut down, it accelerates the biodiversity crisis even more. We have been involved in overhunting and overfishing around the world, disrupting the integrity, stability, and sustainability of ecosystems around the globe. We have caused global climate change, threatening life both on the land and in the ocean. In the midst of a global climate crisis and a global biodiversity crisis that are mutually reinforcing one another, these two crises are mutually reinforcing one another. In the midst of these mutually reinforcing crises, we are addicted to fossil fuels for energy, and we are addicted to a system of industrial animal agriculture that uses 4 times the amount of land for agriculture than we would be using if we all switched to a plant-based diet. If we continue on our current path, if we business as usual, if we continue down this current path of the Sixth Great Extinction, we may see a loss of 50% of all species of life on the planet by 2100. Some scientists say, well, maybe closer to 2200. But geologically speaking, the difference between 2100 and 2200 it's just a blip. It's almost nothing. 50% of all species may be gone sometime between now and 2100 or 2200. This will surely lead to both ecological collapse and economic collapse as the climate becomes unlivable for us and the ecosystems become unsustainable. Life will find a way. Life will find a way to survive if we continue to hurl Earth down the path of the Sixth Great Extinction. But remember, it will take 10 million years for life to recover. Perhaps some highly evolved species, billions of years in the future, will thank us for the ecological niches we opened up for them to evolve and flourish in ways that would not have been possible had we survived longer as a species. But that will be little consolation for us and little consolation for the many species of life we are taking out with us. So the bad news, and it really is bad news, is that we are the problem. No other major extinction event has been caused by one species. If highly intelligent life forms evolve in the future, they may look at the layer of sediment in the geological record of our time and wonder, WTF happened then? Or whatever their equivalent of WTF might be then. The good news is that we know that we are the problem. And for the most part, we know what we have to do to avoid our own demise and the demise of so much of the rest of life. We can't control comets, well, maybe a little bit now. We have the ability maybe to move comets a little bit with some of our technology. It's difficult, though, to control a comet or an asteroid that may have our name on it. Maybe we can, that'd be great. But we can have some control over what we're doing in relation to the climate and what we're doing in relation to habitat loss. We know that we can restore and regenerate large areas of habitat for wildlife, and we know that we can mitigate against the worst of climate change if we move away from industrial animal agriculture and move towards a plant-based diet, and if we quickly wean ourselves off of fossil fuels so that we can preserve a livable climate that will help save so many species of life, including ourselves. So the bad news is that we are the problem. The good news is that we know we are the problem and that there are many actions that we can take to address the mutually reinforcing crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. We know what the bad news is. We are the problem. And we know what the good news is. We are the solution. The yet to be determined news, though, the yet to be determined news depends on whether we can develop the moral, spiritual, and political will to do what we know we have to do to avoid the continued progression of the Sixth Great Extinction. Our parting thought from Edward O. Wilson from his book, The Creation, An Appeal to Save Life on Earth. There is no solution available, I assure you, to save Earth's biodiversity other than the preservation of natural environments in reserves large enough to maintain wild populations sustainably. Only nature can serve as the planetary ark.